Hello and welcome to the next edition of this Daf 46 of the Talmud Bavli, the Steinsaltz edition, Amud B. So let's dive straight in. So just to continue, because it's continuing from the paragraph preceding in the previous in Amud A, it's talking about. Says the Gemara comments, it is obvious that if the outer membrane is perforated, and that was explained, and the inner membrane is not perforated, the inner membrane protects the lung and the animal is kosher. This is in accordance with the statement of Rabbah, as Rabbah says, this animal with the lung whose outer membrane was removed, so that it looks like a red date, is kosher, or the more so that the case if it was only perforated. But if the inner membrane was perforated and the outer membrane was not perforated, does the outer membrane protect the lung or does it not protect it? And in which case the animal is a terefa. Rav Aha and Ravina disagree with regard to this question. One says it does not protect the lung, and one says it protects the lung. And Allah is that it protects the lung in accordance with the statement of Rav Yosef. As Rav Yosef says, with regard to this lung that emits a sound when inflated, if a lung emits a sound when inflated, and one can discern the point from which the sound comes, then one places saliva or straw or similar substance over the area and inflates the lung. If the substance is disturbed due to escaping air, the lung is perforated and is a terefa. If the place from which the sound comes is not discernible, one brings a basin of tepid water, places the lung inside and inflates it. If bubbles appear in the water, the animal is a terefa. If not, only the inner membrane has been perforated, the sound comes from the air moving between the two membranes, and the animal is kosher according to the opinion of Rav Yosef. And that's when the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Shechita 7:7 Shechanach Yodeh 6:4. If we know from where it emits a sound, we set a feather or saliva or straw on that point. If the saliva bubbles when the lung is inflated, the animal is a terefa, since it's proved that the lung is perforated through both membranes, and if not, the animal is kosher. And if we do not know from where it emits a sound, we bring a basin of tepid water and set a lung inside it. One cannot place it in hot water as it causes the lung to contract, closing the perforation. And one cannot place it in cold water as it hardens the lung and may cause it to crack. Rather, we set it in tepid water and inflate it. If the water bubbles, the animal is a terefa. And if not, the animal is kosher, since it is apparent that only the inner membrane is perforated and the outer membrane is not perforated, and the fact that it emits a sound is due to the air moving in the space between the two membranes. Evidently, Rav Yosef holds that only if the inner membrane is perforated, the animal is kosher. The Gemara provides a mnemonic to remember the following statements of Rabbah with regard to long dates: red, that dried, scabbed. The Gemara turns to the matter itself mentioned here. Rabbah says this animal with the lung whose outer membrane was removed so that it looks like a red date is kosher. And Rabbah says, with regard to a lung whose outer membrane is reddened due to bleeding of the lung, if only part of it turned red, then the animal is kosher. But if all of it turned red, the animal is a terefa. According to Rashi, the reddened membrane renders the animal a terefa because it is inevitable that the blood will exit the membrane. The outer membrane is therefore considered already considered to be perforated. Ravina claimed that according to this logic, there is no reason to distinguish between a membrane that is partially or completely reddened. If the blood can be reabsorbed, neither case will result in a terefa, and if not, both will. If a lung has reddened either partially or completely, even if its shade is extremely bright or deep, the animal is kosher according to the opinion of Ravina, as interpreted by Rashi and the majority of the inner commentaries. According to Rabbeinu Ephraim, if there is a wound on the chest wall facing the reddened lung, the animal is a terefa. This ruling is in accordance with Rabbeinu Hananel's interpretation of Ravina's statement here. Now, the reddened lung is a terefa. The custom of Ashkenaz communities is to inspect the chest wall. The remark: if one does not inspect it, the means kosher after the fact. Similar hadasha. The custom of Sephardic communities is to deem the animal kosher even though the wound on the chest wall. And that's the Rambam said Kedusha Shechita 7:16-19 Shechanach Yodeh 38:4 and the Kaf HaChaim there. Kaf HaYomim there. due to bleeding of the lung. If only part of it turned red, then the animal is kosher, but if all of it turned red, the animal is a terefa. What is the reason that the animal is kosher only if part of the outer membrane is reddened? Presumably it's because the animal eventually recovers from the wound. But even if all of it turned red as well, the animal recovers. Isn't it told in the Bible that if one injures one of the 8 impure creeping creatures mentioned in the Torah, one is liable for desecrating Shabbat? And if one injures other opponent creatures and creeping animals, these halachot consider prohibition of causing injury on Shabbat. Based on the Gemara here, most commentators agree that this is an extension of the prohibition of killing a creature on Shabbat. The reason is that injury causes loss of blood, which is linked to the life force of the animal, as the verse states, "For the blood is life." Deuteronomy 12:23. Or if on Shabbat one injured one of the 8 impure creeping creatures mentioned in the Torah, one is liable for desecrating Shabbat, and it causes blood to collect under the skin. If one injures any other repugnant creature or creeping animal, he is not liable unless he causes the blood to issue from the body in accordance with the Mishnah in Shabbat 107a. That's from the Rambam Sefer Zemanim Hilchot Shabbat 8:9 Shulchan or Chaim 18:8. Was not liable unless blood leaves the body as a result of the injury, even if the skin reddens as a result of internal bleeding. And if you would say we compare the lung to one of the 8 creeping creatures, as is taught in a Baita, if the blood collected on the skin of one of the 8 creeping creatures, even if it did not leave the body, one is liable for desecrating Shabbat, because the blood will not be reabsorbed into the body and the wound is permanent. That is difficult. If so, then there is no reason to distinguish between part of the lung and all of it, and even if only part of the lung turned red, the animal should be on the treif as well, because the blood will not be reabsorbed into the body. Rather, there is no difference between the reddening of part or all of the lung. In both cases, the animal is kosher because it can recover. This is inferred in 47b by Rava from the statement of Rabbi Natan Zivashi. By contrast, Rabbi Hananiah understands that in both cases, the animal is a treifa, though he himself rules in Rabbi Natan's case that the animal is kosher. So reconcile these two rulings by explaining that in the latter case, the lungs turn white when inflated, while in the former case, the lungs turn red even when inflated and remaining yet hot. Others explain that in the former case, the lung is especially red due to some condition, but in the latter, the red is only due to bleeding and the wound would heal. Rabbeinu Ephraim Tidarosh. And Rava says, if part of the lung dried, a dry lung is considered to be missing a piece. Therefore, even if only part of the lung dried, the animal is a treifa. This applies as long as the dried part is so dry that it can be cornered with a fingernail. From the statement of Rav Papi in the name of Rava. Some add that if the lung was sufficiently dry, and if one scratches the lung itself with the fingernail, he can afterwards see the scratch on the flesh. The animal is a treifa. Rambam Sefer Kedusha, Hilchot Shechita 87, Shulchan Aruch 13, and see the Shulchan Aruch there. The animal is treifa, and how much must the lung be dried so as to render the animal a treifa? Rav Papi says in the name of Rava. It must be so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. The Gemara asks, in accordance with his opinion in the statement, is it in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushalam, as taught in a Mishnah in Brachot 37a, if a kosher firstborn animal has a blemish, such as a dried ear, it may be slaughtered outside the temple. What is a dried ear? Ezel Hish Vesha. If the ear of the firstborn animal is so dry that it does not bleed, the animal is blemished and may not be sacrificed. It may therefore be slaughtered outside the temple according to the opinion of the first 10 in the Mishnah and the Gemara here. And Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Beit HaMikdash 7.3, see Shulchan Aruch Day 309.2, and the Beis Yosef. Is it any ear that, if perforated, does not be a drop? Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushalam says it must be so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. The Gemara responds, you may say even the statement is according to the opinion of the rabbis with regard to the ear of a firstborn when exposed to the wind. The rabbis hold that the animal will not recover if it is so dry that it does not bleed, but with regard to the lung, which is not exposed to the wind, the animal will would recover unless it is so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. And Rabbi says this lung that stands before is covered in scabs. Gilde. If the lungs are intact but covered with peeling layers, the animal is kosher in accordance with the statement of Rabbi. Or covered in black marks. The Gemara rules in 47b that if a lung blackened and resembles the color of eyeshadow, the animal is kosher, while if it resembles the color of ink, the animal is a terefa. Some explain that in the case of the Gemara here, the color of the lungs is inky black. Here the animal remains kosher because it is merely covered with marks as opposed to having completely changed color. The Bible also posits that while in this case discussed on 47b, the lung itself turns black, here it is covered in black growths. The Olim understand that in case of the Gemara here as well, the animal is only kosher if the marks are not black as ink, not as black as ink. This is also the ruling of the Rambam. According to this understanding, the Gemara teaches that the appearance of several black marks is no worse than affliction of a blackened lung. And so to here, the Gemara is not mandatory unless the marks are sufficiently black, and that's from the Meiri. Or covered in swords with different appearances, it is nevertheless kosher. If the lung is an acceptable color, 47b, even if it is covered in swords of different colors, the animal is kosher according to the statement of Rabbi is able to do the name says the name of Rabbi, one may not compare cysts of the lung. Perforation is found in a cyst in the lung, and it is uncertain whether the perforation occurred before or after slaughter, and it was found in a location in which it can be attributed to the handling of the butcher during inspection and when the animal is terefa. But when not make a separate perforation in another cyst, compared to two, consists in appearance of change in event, and this will not prove that the perforation is recent according to the statement of Nemo. Statement of the Ducha, which creates 750. 37b. This refers to a small growth filled with fluid found on the surface of the lung. If a cyst is perforated before the animal is slaughtered, it is considered as though the lung itself has been perforated, and the animal is a terefa. In the case of the Gemara here, perforation is found on the cyst. It is unclear whether the perforation occurred before or after the animal was slaughtered, and it was not found in a location where it can be attributed to in general, one can determine whether perforation in the lung appears after slaughter by making a second perforation in the lung and comparing the two. The two perforations seem similar, meaning that the first was also made after slaughter. However, teaches that this principle may not be extended to cysts, as their appearance changes constantly, and the perforated cyst may have a different appearance beforehand. Says Rashi. And if one finds the perforated cyst on the lung but does not know whether it is perforated before or after slaughter, he may not perform a test by perforating another cyst in order to compare their appearances. And Rabbi says there are two lobes of the lung that adhere to one another. The lung consists of several lobes, unot, two on the left and three on the right, and two larger caudal lobes, umot, which constitute the lower lungs. Adhesions in which thin strands of particularly viscous mucus extend from one lobe to another are a relatively common phenomenon in the lungs. In commentaries discuss the case of an adhesion that is not connected to another lobe. Total lobes of the intestine. According to the Gaonim, the Gemara here refers to adhesions of any size. The Beina Hanan attests to a received tradition that this statement applies only to adhesions that fully fuse the two lobes without any empty space between them. This may be the significance of the word adhere. As opposed to the text of the Halachat Gedolot, refers to two lobes that enjoy one another. The early commentaries cite two justifications for the prohibition of an animal with an adhesion of the lung. Rashi explains that adhesions arise as a result of perforation, and therefore the animal is is presumably a tueva due to perforation of the lungs. By contrast, Rabbeinu Yitzchak explains that adhesions arise naturally in lungs that have not been perforated, which is to assume that adhesions will eventually be torn, causing a perforation of the lung. Perforations will inevitably arise in the lungs. They are considered to be perforated already. When adhesions are found between any two non-adjacent lobes, the animal is a tueva. If the adhesions are between two adjacent lobes, the animal is kosher and does not require inspection according to the statement of Rava. Nevertheless, adhesions must be in a location where the adjacent lobes are in contact each other when the lung is inflated. The Rama writes, some commentaries classify the being Gershom Mohagola, or that even in such a case, one must inspect the lung related by inflating it. This was who understands that since the phrase have no need for inspection stated with regard to non-adjacent lobes, it indicates that the case of adhesions between two adjacent lobes do not require inspection. Today, there is no received tradition as how to inspect the lung, and therefore, in all cases that require inspection, the animal must be deemed a tueva if it is attached. Because of an Ashkelon community is to deem the animal kosher without inspection, when an adhesion is found between two adjacent lobes on the lower half. Additionally, if a film forms connecting the two lobes the base up until half the height, the animal is kosher. To find a community, the animal is kosher even when the adhesion is on the upper half of the lobe to the Priya Chadosh. The Yochanan contains a clause stating explicitly that there is a distinction with regard to rendering an animal a tueva between fine hair-like adhesions and larger ones. The more by contrast writes that the custom is to test the adhesions by squeezing them. If the adhesion comes apart when squeezed, it is considered mucus rather than a true adhesion and does not render the animal a tueva. Others have the custom of removing the adhesion and spreading the lung for perforation by inflating it to teshuva. Similarly, Ashkelonic communities are stringent in this respect and consume meat only from animals with no adhesions at all on their lungs. This meat is called glat in Yiddish and chalak in Hebrew, meaning smooth. Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 8:5 Shulchan Aruch Day 39:4 10:13 and the comment of the Ramah. Modern medical science has found that adhesions of the lung appear in both humans and animals as a result of an infection, especially pleurisy. The inflammation and the membrane surrounding the lungs. When an infection occurs, the pleural membranes become more permeable, and the body secretes substances into the lungs to strengthen the tissue there. Effective prevention of pulmonary disease in animals lowers the risk of lung adhesions. There's a picture here of a lung with an adhesion connecting a small lobe with a cordial lobe. The thin strands have no need for inspection since its system adhesions arose due to perforation of the lung when the animal tueva. The Gemara adds, as we said, this halacha only regards adhesions that are out of order. Rashi explains that although adhesions are caused by perforations, they are in adjacent lobes. The perforation will be able to heal. Other commentaries challenge this interpretation, since if it is theoretically possible for perforation in the lung to heal, it should not render an animal tueva. But according to Rabbeinu Yitzchak's explanation that adhesions only indicate the inevitability of a perforation in the future, it's likely that this would apply more readily to non-adjacent lobes, when the tension on the adhesion caused by the movement of the non-adjacent lobes would lead to perforation. Some understand this explanation as follows. Although some perforations can heal by itself, one cannot know which ones would do so without evidence. An adhesion between adjacent lobes is sufficient evidence that the perforation would be able to heal by itself, and such a perforation that is sealed by adjacent tissue is not considered from the outset. Alternatively, the Ravid suggests that adhesions on adjacent lobes specifically do not indicate perforations, as they can be formed as a result of normal pressure on the lobes against one another. Adhesions found on the non-adjacent lobes, though, are a result of perforations, when the lobe adhered to a non-adjacent lobe. With regard to adhesions that are in order, that is their normal manner of growth, the animal is kosher. Hope this made sense. Thank you very much for listening, and take care. All the best. Bye.